Good morning, class. Yesterday we completed till here. They would hand him over as a prisoner. Now let us begin from here. The lines from the textbook are: I will have nothing to do with it, Yumi said. I am a poor person and it is not my business. The explanation is Yumi said that she was not concerned about their plans. She added that she was a poor person and it was none of her business to know about their plans. Here, business means the work. Further lines are: Then please, Hannah said gently, return to your own work. At once, Yumi left the room, but this left Hannah with the white man alone. She might have been too afraid to stay, had not her anger at Yumi's stubbornness now sustained her. Sustained means here continued. Explanation of the above passage is: Hannah said to Yumi that then she should return to her work. Yumi left the room at once. Hannah was again left with the white man. She would have been afraid to remain there all alone, but her anger on Yumi's first determination made her stay in the room. Dear students, the lines from the textbook are: Stupid Yumi. She muttered fiercely. Muttered means said very slowly. Is this anything but a man and a wounded, helpless man? Explanation of the above passage is: Hannah said with anger that Yumi was a stupid person. She said that it was just an injured man. So, according to uh, Hannah, the man was nothing but an injured person and he was not going to harm her. So, she was now recovering herself from the fear. In the conviction of her own superiority, she bent impulsively and untied the knotted rugs that kept the white man covered. When she had his breast bare, she dipped the small clean towel that Yumi had brought into the steaming hot water and washed his face carefully. The man's skin, though rough with exposure, was of a fine texture and must have been very blonde when he was a child. Conviction means here firm belief. Impulsively means to do something suddenly without thinking. Rugs means here blanket, blonde of light color. Explanation of the above passage is: Hannah was so full of anger at the refusal by the maid Yumi that without thinking she opened the blanket in which the man was injured. His chest was bare. Bare means here naked. Hannah took a small clean towel, dipped it in the steaming hot water, and washed his face. The man's skin was rough due to being exposed to the sun, but it had a good texture and he must have been very fair as a child. Further, while she was thinking these thoughts, though not really liking the man better now that he was no longer a child, she kept on washing him until his upper body was quite clean, but she dared not turn him over. Where was Sadao? Now her anger was ebbing, and she was anxious again, and she rose, wiping her hands on the wrong towel. Then, lest the man be chilled, she put the quilt over him. Ebbing means here decreasing gradually. Rose means stood up. Chilled means here freeze due to cold weather. Dear students, explanation of the above passage is: Hannah kept on cleaning the man's upper body as she had these thoughts. She did not like the man as he was not a child anymore. She did not have the courage to turn him over and thought of Sadao. Her anger was decreasing and she started becoming restless. She stood up and wiped her hands with the wrong towel. As she did not want the man to freeze due to the cold weather, she put the quilt on him. Further lines, Sadao, she called softly. He had been about to come in when she called. His hand had been on the door and now he opened it. She saw that he had brought his surgeon's emergency bag and that he wore his surgeon's coat. Hannah called out to Sadao softly. Explanation of the above passage is he had been on the door when she called him. He means here Dr. Sadao and she, none other except Hannah, Sadao's wife. He opened the door. Hannah saw that Sadao was carrying his surgeon's emergency bag. This was such a bag in which doctor keeps all his instruments, surgical instruments, and was wearing his surgeon's coat. It was a special apron for a doctor is to be worn during the operation in a theater. He was prepared to operate upon the injured man. Further lines from the textbook are you have decided to operate, she cried. Yes, he said shortly. He turned his back to her and unfolded a sterilized towel upon the floor of the tokonoma alcove and put his instrument out upon it. Dear students, sterilized means here disinfected. Tokonoma above means the word toko literally means floor or bed. Ma means space or room. In English, tokonoma is usually called alcove. It is a part of a room where things are displayed. A niche or an alcove in a Japanese home for displaying a flower arrangement, kekumuno or other piece of art. So this is the explanation of this word. Hana asked Sadao that had he decided to operate the man. Sadao replied that he had decided to operate him. He turned his back to Hana as he did not want her to object to his decision. Sadao started his work. He opened a sterilized towel on the floor of the tokonoma alcove and placed his surgical instruments on it. So this is the explanation of the above passage. Further lines, fetch towels, he said. Sadao asked Hana to get some towels. This is the explanation of those words. Further lines from the textbook are she went obediently, but how anxious now, to the linen shelves and took out the towels. There ought also to be old pieces of matting so that the blood would not ruin the fine floor covering. She went out to the back veranda where the gardener kept strips of matting with which to protect delicate shrubs on cold nights and took an armful of them. The explanation of the above passage is Hannah obeyed Sadao and went out to get the towels. She was curious as Sadao was operating upon the injured man. She thought that the blood from his wounds could stain the fine mats which covered the floor of the room. So she got some rough mats from the backyard which were used by the gardener to cover the delicate shrubs from the cold weather. But when she went back into the room, she saw this was useless. The blood had already soaked through the packing in the man's wound and had ruined the mat under him. By the time Hannah reached the room, she saw that blood had flowed through the bandage on the man's wound and had stained the mat beneath him. Her effort was futile. Futile means here useless. Oh, the mat, she cried. Yes, it is ruined, Sadao replied as though he did not care. Help me to turn him, he commanded her. She obeyed him without a word and he began to wash the man's back carefully. The explanation of the above lines is: on seeing the stained mat, Hannah cried that the mat had been spoiled. Sadao agreed that the mat had been ruined in such a manner which indicated that he was not bothered by it. Sadao ordered Hannah to help him turn the man over. She obeyed him and then Sadao started washing his back. So actually you can see that even Hannah and Sadao both were doing their work, being professionals, and still there was a fear in their mind that they are trying to save an American prisoner who is their enemy. Not only their enemy but enemy to the country, that is Japan. Further lines from the textbook are: Yumi would not wash him, she said. Did you wash him then? Sadao asked, not stopping for a moment his swift, concise movements. Yes, she said. He did not seem to hear her, but she was used to his absorption when he was at work. She wondered for a moment. Wondered means a thought. If it mattered to him, what was the body upon which he worked so long, as it was for the work he did so excellently. So this was a particular habit of a doctor. Concise means short. The explanation of the above line says: Hannah told Sadao that Yumi had refused to wash the injured man. Sadao asked her that did she wash him. He did not stop cleaning him. He made fast small movements of his hands as he cleaned him carefully. Sadao was engrossed in work and did not seem to hear Hannah. Hannah wondered that Sadao was not bothered who the injured man was. He was only concerned in performing his work well. So this shows that really Dr. Sadao was a true patriot as well as true surgeon. Further lines from the textbook are: you will have to give the anesthetic if he needs it, he said. I? She repeated blankly. But never have I. It is easy enough, he said impatiently. He was taking out the packing now, and the blood began to flow more quickly. He peered into the wound with the bright surgeon's light fastened on his forehead. The bullet is still there, he said with cool interest. Now I wonder how deep this rock wound is. If it is not too deep, it may be that I can get the bullet. But the bleeding is not superficial, he has lost much blood. Anesthetic means here a substance that induces insensitivity to pain. Superficial means here existing or occurring at or on the surface. Explanation of the above line says: Sadao told Hannah that she would have to inject the injured man with a substance that induces insensitivity to pain. Hannah replied that she had never done that earlier. Sadao said in a haste means a very quick manner, that it was very easy. Sadao was removing the packing and now the blood started flowing faster. He looked at the wound with the help of the bright surgeon's light fixed on his forehead. He announced that the bullet was inside the man's body. He wondered that how deep the wound made by the rock was. He said that if the wound was not very deep, then he could get the bullet out. He added that the bleeding was not from the surface of the skin, which meant that the wound was deep and the man had already lost a lot of blood. Further lines are: at this moment Hannah choked. He looked up and saw her face the color of sulfur. Her face the color of sulfur means here sulfur is a yellow colored element The clause means that her face became pale yellowish in color because of fear and terror. When Hannah saw Sadao inspecting the wound, she could not see the sight, and so she cuffed. Sadao looked at her and saw that her face was yellowish in color like the color of sulfur. So you can see that Hannah was not in habit of watching such a great operation just before it, and that's why she was doing so. So students, thank you very much, and we will continue explaining of the passages in the next turns because this is the longest chapter in Vistas.